Okay, today is October 17th, 2015. My name is Katherine Bynum. I'm here with Miss Pauline Gasca-Valenciano. I'm working with the City of Fort Worth for the Latino Americans 500 Years of History. Miss Pauline, could you go ahead and tell me when and where you were born?
Okay, I was born in December 1936 to Jose Gasca and Nicolasa Maldonado. I've always used my maiden name, Pauline Gasca-Valenciano. And they came here in 1916. My dad fled the revolution. And then I'm the youngest of 9. And my oldest brother's named Pascal, and Gasca, his deceased, and Carmen, and Mary, Josie, Lupe, Lucy, Emmanuel, Frank, and myself. So I'm the youngest. There's only 3 sisters left and 1 brother of the 9 of us. Anyway, my mom and dad came to Fort Worth. My dad fled the revolution, and when he came to this country, he worked the migrant fields. And he was telling us that it was real hard for them because they didn't have no paperwork, and they used to work them from sunset to sunrise. And they told him it was 8 hours, and they stole 4 hours from him daily. Anyway, he wasn't a quitter. He kept working there, and I don't know, he had some cousins in Chicago, and he worked in Chicago for a few years, and had 3 older brothers and sisters with him. Anyway, he got hurt by the train, and he came back to Fort Worth. Anyway, we were all born in Fort Worth except one of us born in Chicago. And he worked at Texas Steel, and I remember when I was a little girl, St. Nan's Mission was it was a very small Catholic church, and my mom and dad helped found Immaculate Heart much after that. But we used to have a little lady there, and her husband was a printer, and she used to have like a kindergarten for us, and she had goats, and we used to go to her little school before we went to school. And she taught us the ABCs and numbers, and that was really neat. And she used to give us vanilla wafers with goat milk. Then our church, we had Worth Heights right there on the service road of Pripyat and I-35, but we weren't allowed to go there because we were Mexicans. So Carswell donated a barrack to Immaculate Heart. It was in St. Anne, and we had 1st and 2nd grade in one room, and 3rd and 4th in the other room. And for many families, that's the only education a lot of people had. Anyway, I remember, going to 1st grade, and I didn't know English because all we taught was Spanish at home. And I will never forget, because our teacher had us in a circle. First of all, she was very strange. Her name was Miss Stevens. She used to wear some little stainless steel plates in her nose, and the kids would say because she didn't want to breathe the Mexican germs, bless her heart. Anyway, and whenever we were doing the colors, when they called on me, it was brown. And brown in Spanish is café. Mm-hmm. And when I said coffee, everybody laughed at me, and I felt so humiliated. I felt so embarrassed. But that I will never forget that from my 1st grade. Mm-hmm. That was really something. Anyway, after we finished school there, then we would go to South Fort Worth, and that was like maybe 12 blocks or so, and we had to pass by the railroad tracks. And several kids had some close calls. And me being the youngest of 9, I was very protective. Anyway, I went to South Fort Worth, and I loved it. And I remember Miss Forney, our 5th grade teacher, took us to downtown to see Carrie Truly. And I remember that was the first president that I seen. And my dad was very political.
Okay.
He used to take us to downtown to meet all the presidential candidates that came to town. And you would not believe that I have seen every president in person, from Harry Truman. I met Clinton in Chicago, and I came and got on his bandwagon here in Fort Worth. And on election day, when they said he was going to win, I went to Arkansas, and I was there for 3 great days. And I saw Clinton make his acceptance speech like maybe 15 feet from me. It was so cool. And then I went to his inauguration. I was there for a whole week. But way back, you know, going back to what me being active in politics is because when Kennedy ran for president, you know, we had a Viva Kennedy here in Tarrant County.
Were you a part of it?
Yes, I'm the only living woman alive of the Viva Kennedy.
Oh, really?
And I've been involved 52 years. I got an award 2 years ago from the Democratic Women's Club. And Richard Quevedo and I are the only 2 members that have been involved 50 plus in politics. And that was a very good group. We lost all the rest of our members, but I have been involved since. And then after Kennedy was assassinated, my husband got orders and we were living in Fort Meade. And then I was in Fort Knox. So we were in the military 14 years. Anyway, when I came back in '67, I started doing the community events and getting involved and getting arrested on Cesar Chavez March.
You got arrested in the Cesar
And got
Chavez
thrown in
March?
jail, yes.
What did you get arrested for?
Because we were boycotting Safeway.
Okay.
And I would go in the store and get a bunch of groceries and ask what was going on in the back and in the parking lot. And they said, oh, there's some protesters. So I would leave the groceries. I did that 3 times, and that prompted them to call the police on us.
Because you went in and asked what was going on?
I would go and load out the cart, pretend I didn't know what was going on back there. And I did it 3 times before they watched me, I guess. And then they called the police on us. That was so funny, and it's scary at the same time. And I remember I was so upset because they sent the paddy wagon, and they wouldn't let me ride the paddy wagon. They sent a squad car to pick up me and my 2 younger daughters. They were going to St. Mary's Catholic School. And oh my God, I remember the nuns being so upset. But 3 years later, Sister Linda was in the picket line with us. We made her a believer. Yes, yes. And I remember my daughters didn't call anybody of my family because I was the youngest and I was always like a rebel rouser and left right from the 60s. So she called. I think she called David Chappell, who was a city councilman, and Chris Miller, which was a senator. So everybody was trying to bail me out, and I remember we had to stay in jail for 7 hours because they had to touch base with the people from Dallas, and then they had to touch base with it in California so they could release us.
What was the charge that was filed against you?
I really don't even know, I guess, because we were protesting in Safeway. You know, they own the biggest owners of the fields and the pesticides and all that. And that's why we did that. So I really don't even know. I just know that it was quite an experience.
Being in jail for 7 hours.
Yes, and then I was supposed to be a speaker at some organization that evening. Well, I had enough time to go home and shower and do my speech later on that evening, but that was really a long day. I'll never forget it. But anyway, like I was saying, I got involved with Kennedy, and then, you know, we went to Fort Meade and Fort Knox and came back since '67, and then I got hired by the Community Action Agency, which was a war and poverty program that Johnson had. It was Kennedy's dream, but Johnson put it to work. And I remember they trained us to be social workers in our community. And way back then, we used to go to all the grocery stores in the neighborhoods and the gas stations and compare prices to the better neighborhoods. And we found a lot of things. And I remember also bringing Channel 11 and Channel 5 and all of them aware about minorities. And we came up with, we used to have the Chicano luncheon, which I don't think no longer exists. And Los Tiempos with Jose Gonzalez. And then we had Time Out with Scotch from the black community. And that's how the Minority Leaders Luncheon started, that goes on every day on Vickery and Riverside in the black community. And I remember we used to work together, and we had a fantastic, coalition way back then. And we used to just...
The Black and Brown Coalition?
Yes, yes, we used to do that and work together. And it was really neat. And they used to send us to conferences and workshops to get all our credit hours, and it was really cool because we met other from the whole U.S. When House Speaker Jim Wright was in office, he was the one instrumental for the community block grant funds, and Fort Worth, Texas was the first city. So we were instrumental in going out and finding out, and we decentralized services to our neighborhoods. Like I was instrumental in getting the dental program at Worth Heights and getting Worth Heights built. I also was instrumental in developing Echo Lake. And we used to do a lot of great things. And I remember when the Fort Worth ISD, we filed suit on segregation. And then I was also instrumental in getting the bilingual program. When Rudy Rodriguez was in charge, the first director, and then we went back and got it to all the rest of the grades. And then when my daughters went to Trimble Tech, they didn't used to have college recruiters until I brought it up to their attention, and I demanded that. And I remember Dr. Amos, the history teacher, used to let me go in and do voter registration. And then she took over my job there, so I did that also. And then in the middle 80s, my daughter and I wrote a proposal for a dropout prevention program. And I remember we used to get all the middle school kids, black, white, and Hispanic, and I used to have speakers, judges, and lawyers, and community people, professionals. And I found out then that Operation Can Do was not good enough in middle school, that we needed to start in elementary, because we lose a lot of our kids, in middle school. We always wanted to have lawyers and doctors and teachers and this and that. Well, we couldn't even get them out of middle school into high school, much less be everything else, So whenever I worked for the teenage adolescent, when I went for youth advocacy program, Tarrant County Youth Advocacy, I found out then how bad the system was. And it hasn't changed very much. Because between the zero tolerance, the police department, and the schools, we're figuring out correctional schools with our kids, our present and our future. I remember having this little young guy and when I used to take him to school, and I had to take him to school and introduce myself, and I used to take him to, Alcoholic Anonymous programs, drug abuse, anger management, and all that. We used to take them, with the youth advocacy program. And I found out then that the system was doing worse than ever, because I had a young man that had been around for 2 years, bounced around from one school to the other, and he belonged in a special class. And the reason the teacher or the counselor found out is because I used to tell him, I want you to tell my my youth, I used to call my little angels, because they were little fallen angels, because it wasn't their fault, it was their parents' fault. I said, let you sign a contract what he plans to do. And when that little boy said school, he spelled C-O-O-L, and she really, so I think we were there about an hour and a half. She found out all this stuff that was going on bad, you know, for his sake, that he was just slipped through the cracks. And he belonged in special ed. And that was really sad, but it was so sad. And I remember I used to work with a little girl. Her name was Iris, and she used to get in trouble all the time. Well, I was real concerned about Iris. So I went to the teachers, her other teachers, besides her homeschool, and she was doing okay. And then one time she accused us of cheating, and then she made her take the test on Monday by herself. Well, she had 100 on that test. So it was just a personality clash. And you know, it was just so sad. All the 5 girls that I work with with the advocacy program, they all were unwed mothers, you know, dropouts. One of my little girls was a runner at 14, and she had beautiful voice. She sang, she knew every Selena voice by heart. I remember every song by heart. Anyway, I saw that they weren't really doing the counseling and the mentoring and everything that they needed, you know, and they need to work with church, school, and home to get this thing solved. And you know, corporate America, you know, adopts all these schools. They don't need money, they need warm bodies to help these kids, you know, get over the hump or whatever they're good at and what they're lacking. It's very important. And that's concerned me because I always felt like I was a product of the ISD, not giving us the quality education that we had in our schools. And it's still happening today, right? And now everywhere I go, and sometimes these politicians don't like it. I said, between the school police department and this zero tolerance, we're filling out, you know, juveniles. There was a military hospital in Marlin, Texas. Now it's a juvenile center. It's crazy. And all of this corporate America, you know, investing in prisons, you know, for Mickey Mouse stuff. You know, it's crazy. I remember the reason I wrote that proposal on Operation Can Do was because one of my little guys stole a $7 T-shirt from Sears. Well, his mom had to pay $35 a month to the state, and he had a year's probation for that. And I told him, had anybody gone to elementary school and tell you that that was wrong and you couldn't take nothing from the stores? And I remember they used to tell me, not even a bubble gum? I said, no, not even a bubble gum. That's a no-no. And I found out that that kind of things went on, you know. And it was so sad. And I remember one of my little angels pulled a crank on his teachers. He put some flour in a bag and took it to school, and they hauled him off to Tarrant County. And he kept telling them that it was flour, but nobody would inspect it. So he got.
What did they think it was?
So they still charge. Isn't that crazy?
What did they think it was?
Cocaine. He was a little clown. And you know what? Also, I remember I used to work with different member groups, but when they were with me, I was mom. And I remember taking them to the fast food places as part of our job to eat, and sometimes even Caesar's Pizza or some of the fast food would hire them. You know, so, you know, that was a very good program. And I think that one thing that Fort Worth has done is they used to have gang activity, you know, some kind of program. They wiped it out. It's needed more than ever. Yeah. So anyway, like I say, I've just been involved in a little bit of
A
everything.
little bit of everything.
Yes.
Were you involved at all with the La Raza Unida party at all?
Well, you know what? Let me tell you about the Raza Unida. I was very much involved with the crowd in the Chicano Movement in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And Benitez was part of that also. And I knew that the Republican Party gave him money. And everybody that would belong to that hated to hear that from me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember they even wanted to get me a job under Nixon. You know, and I said, no, I can't do that. Because I had to switch parties. I said, I'm a diehard Democrat till I die, you know. But I remember we had a lot of Hispanics that got top jobs, and I got to meet all of them. Because they were at all these conferences. We had Unidos, 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 and we had the political action community in San Jose, California. Then Reyes Lopez Tejerina has his conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the land reform. I was there, and I remember taking on the Green Berets, the Brown Berets.
The Brown Berets.
Oh, they were bad. They were under Jorge Gonzalez. It was really bad. And I remember Ramsey Muniz was involved, and they said he got set up and went to prison for drugs. And then we had Reyes Lopez and Cesar Chavez. So I got to meet all of them. And at every conference that we had, national conference, there was always one missing. Ramsey was there, Cesar was there, you know, Jorge or somebody was missing in all of them. And I remember telling them the last time that I saw them, I said, I hope that all of you won't be together when somebody's in a casket. And that's exactly what happened. And I also was involved, the last time I saw Cesar Chavez was in 1980 when Ted Kennedy was running for president. And I went there at the fundraiser. And I remember that's the last time I got to talk to Cesar, because he was very frail because he did, you know, the fasting. And I told him, you know, that everybody was very concerned about that because it affected his health. But he felt like that was the only way he would get the attention needed. And it was true, you know, and it just ruined his health. But I remember, you know, speaking to him. That was the last time I saw him in person. And then there was 50 women, senior citizens. I was much younger then. And I went to Ted Kennedy and told him that there was 50 senior citizens that had paid $50 to see him. So he got them to stand up, and they gave him a standing ovation. But it was so neat. And when my daughter was in D.C., I used to get passes for the House and the Senate. And I used to go under the tunnel with Lloyd Benson and all kinds of politicians. And I remember going to their office, and they would say, you know, Ted Kennedy will come visit you. You just have to wait. And it was so much fun, you know, to do that. I just went wild when my daughter was in D.C. going back and forth, because it was under the Carter administration. It was a 99-cent round trip, $99 round trip to D.C. So we got to visit a lot, you know. But and I've always involved myself in every campaign in Tarrant County, city council, you know, state rep, county, national. I'm always there.
What do you feel like is the most pressing issue for the Latino community today?
Excuse me?
The most pressing issue for the Latino community today?
I think to recognize who we really are and how valuable we are, and how hard work we are, and we're sincere and dedicated and good hard workers. You know, we're the show me type of raza, you know? You show me how and I'll learn how to do it. You know, like I don't do Facebook or email or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, this computer never breaks down, and it's never slow.
Right.
Never freezes either,
Right.
you know. And that's what I see. I told my daughters I was going to get one of my politicians to pass a law that nobody should be texting while they're eating at home and out of the house. Mom. But it's the truth, right?
Right, right.
I mean,
right.
people don't even communicate with you. They go, you know, and that's so
It drives me
rude.
crazy.
It's so rude.
It is.
You know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's great for a lot of people. And then what happens? And these kids, especially, I used to advocate to all the kids that I work with, my little angels, don't get them a cell phone. Don't
Mm-hmm.
get them a cell phone because they get in trouble. And sure enough,
Yeah.
you know, that's not good.
It's just bad news. It's bad.
I didn't let my daughters date till they were in high school or wear makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I was very tough on them.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? It paid off.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest daughter got a leadership degree from Harvard 4 years ago. And she's an arbitrator, investigator, mediator, and a teacher. She retired 30 years from the city about 5-6 years ago. And she's got a daughter who's a photographer. Her son works for the city 7 years already.
Mm-hmm.
And then Susie is a psychology professor from Tarrant County College. She's worked there 30 years and she's working part-time. And her daughter works for American Airlines. And her son, JJ, used to tear up everything when he was a little kid. I used to call him the destroyer. He's an automotive specialist for Toyota. They're going to send him to Japan to do better. And then Diane, are my Aggies. She's a director for Success School at Tarleton State University. Her 2 older daughters got full scholarships, and they're both A&M Aggies. One of them works in San Francisco. No, she moved recently to Berkeley. And Natalie works at Las Colinas. She works 3 days at the office, 2 days at home, and vice versa. And she's getting married in April next year. And my youngest grandson is a sophomore at Texas Tech. And my youngest daughter is Jacqueline, and she's the one that lost Nicolasa in March. And then her son works for JPS like she does. And Stephanie graduated in March, not May. And she's has interview with Lockheed Martin, Burlington Northern, and Textron, and I think for JPS. Mm-hmm. She's into data statistics.
Oh my goodness.
And I have 5 great-grandbabies that gave me a new lease on life.
All your hard work is
yes.
paid off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a twice breast cancer survivor.
Oh my goodness.
But I tell you, I have worked just counting north, south, east, and love.
It sounds like it.
Door to door.
Mm-hmm.
And the last campaign that I worked with in Worth Heights, where I was born and raised, I had 2 rookies. They had one side on each street, 3 blocks. Mm-hmm. And I had one by myself. You wouldn't believe, and in Comadre on the left and right, I did mine, and I did half of the block of theirs. Mm-hmm. And then somebody called me on the phone. Hey, Pauline, is that your guys out there working out there? I says, yes, Mr. Aguilar. He says, well, they got a few that they put in mailboxes. I said, they did? She says, well, I have the addresses for you, and this is just the ones that I saw. I said, well, thank you for being a good watchdog. I said, hey, girls. Well, they wasn't in the mailbox. We just did it with the clothespin. I said, that's still the mailbox, okay? Don't do it again. But that's the stuff I do. Isn't that terrible?
No.
And I worked in politics for 25 years.
Goodness.
And I'd get off work at 5 and then go out there and put out signs for all the politicians all over the place. I was like, hey, what are you doing? Some of the people were not man. I remember when I worked for Luther Perry's campaign, he ran for sheriff. And he sent me out his brother to put out signs. And when he came back, his brother was exhausted. He said, you know what, don't ever send me out with that crazy lady. She says, hell, she had about 9 signs, and I was just barely doing my third one, and she was just going crazy.
He's talking about you?
Don't ever see me again with that crazy lady.
It's funny.
And I remember those kids that I used to work with, I used to take them to be part of the campaign. And we did 100 signs in an hour and a half, and they couldn't believe it. And that's when you used to, staple them and not, hammer the thing. And then, oh my God.
That's funny.
Yeah. And I remember going to the Southwest Voter Registration Project. I was trained by Willie Velasquez, and I had an open door policy up there. They used to love to always, put me on the stand because I was always telling the stories. I remember one time we went to Corpus, and they sent us out in the field to register people. I did the most, 28. And 28? Oh, where? I said I went to washateers, restaurants,
Right.
whatever. And they couldn't believe it. And then even last year, I live in Casa at Senior Citizens Housing. And last year I worked for Southwest and did some phone banking. I was the oldest of 12, and I missed 2 days. And I called 2,716 voters.
Oh my gosh.
And they said, had I worked all the other 2 days, I would have broke the whole state's record.
You just keep going. Look at you.
Yes, I mean, that just happened last. And then what happens? My house, Casa Incorporated, calls me to the carpet. You've been working. You're not supposed to work without permission. I said, oh, really? She says, no, And so I had to pay $28 a month more for rent monthly because I was a black girl. $800, I couldn't believe it.
Oh my goodness.
And one of my jobs was to develop jobs for senior citizens on fixed income
Right.
for the Department of Labor.
Right.
And then they canned me on because I went.
You worked.
But that's me.
Who knows? Well, thank you so
I
much.
don't know if
coming in today.
I've given you
Yes.
jumping up and down, but
No, but that's
I've had a
great.
fruitful life.
That sounds like
I
it,
was
very
a
much
widow
so.
at 32.
I'm sorry?
A widow, Vietnam widow,
Oh, goodness,
at
I'm
32
sorry.
with an 8, 10, 13 and 15-year-olds. But I put them all through Catholic school. I was tough on them. They said Mom would be a great matron in reform school, but she was tough on them. But it worked.
Well,
So-
thank you so much for being here today.
And
really
I
thankful
still
for every story.
do volunteer work and everything.
Oh,
Everybody
good.
calls me from the Chamber of Commerce. They always call me about anything that has anything to do with problems, social problems, or immigration or school.
Right.
Call Pauline. They give them my cell phone. And I call, hey guys, thank you for confidence. She said, well, you're the only one that ever helps the people. All the other numbers that we have here, they never, call back. So I call them and thank you for confidence, and they send me more people. But I love it.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being
Yeah,
here.
what I value